I'm Chanel, and welcome to episode 12 of the Nell podcast. I'm a recent college grad with a physics degree, and I'm also currently a teacher in training in New Jersey. This podcast is about my adventures in knitting, spinning, adulting, and learning about new things. So you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Piper Nell, Pipernell. And if you're here, I assume you already know where I am on YouTube, but if you like what you see, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. And join the Ravelry group. It's a really cool bunch of people. Introduce yourself. I have a new chatter thread in the group, so if you've been keeping up, check it out. And if you're new, well, now you can hop right in and chat. So, other social media, I'm on Facebook. Well, I have a Facebook page where I post knitting and various cool links. And I'm going to try to incorporate that more into my social media platforms with this podcast, and that is called Piper Nell, and it's spelled exactly the same as my Instagram and Ravelry, but with a space between Piper and Nell. Alright, so with that little announcement-y part in place, let's get moving, because I have a lot of stuff in my notes, and this is the first time that I've filled up a page on Word before I even got to the chattery stuff. So let's get moving. All right, first up, Cal News, and I'm currently hosting a Cal knit along that's really all inclusive. I've heard make along before. I like that. Unfortunately, it's kind of too late for me to switch. I think it'd be confusing for people. But anyway, this Cal is called the KIP-Along, and it's swinging. So this Cal is in the form of a photo challenge. So take a photo of yourself knitting, crocheting, crafting in public, whatever. It's very open-ended and hopefully easy to enter. And it runs until August 31st. So you can enter on both Instagram and Ravelry. You enter on Instagram with your picture by using the hashtag KIPWithMe, KIP with me. And you can enter on Ravelry by posting the picture in the Cal thread, which is in the Ravelry group. So multiple entries are possible, and also you can get bonus entries, and all of those details are in the Ravelry thread, so check it out. So I have some announcements for prizes. Marcia, who is very little of the Twitch and Stitch podcast, has donated a copy of her schmancy shawl pattern to the Cal, and I am so excited. Marcia got in touch with me on Instagram, and it was just such a nice little message. And alright, Marcia, you're going to hear more gushing from me later. This episode is called People with Big Hearts, just because in these past couple weeks since recording my last episode, I feel like I've just received so much support from people in my life, and it's really keeping me going. Thank you, everyone. I'm just so grateful for everyone's presence. I feel like I should say her pattern name all schmancy. So yeah, that's a really lovely pattern, and I'm so excited to be able to give a copy to someone who enters the giveaway. So that's one prize, and then still on the list are skeins of my hand spun. So I have one skein that is currently finished that's in the prize pool, and I will have a short spinning section where you will hear about more future prizes. So stay tuned. And a big thank you to Shannon at the Sock Setter podcast for mentioning this Cal. I know I'm a fairly small podcast, not that many viewers, and growing. So thank you so much to Shannon for helping me get the word out. And she is also one of the people with big hearts. She's been a huge source of support for me, and I'm very proud to call her a friend, and she's also been a mentor to me and just all around great person. So on the Cal, we have over 20 entries on Instagram now, and that's awesome, but we only have about 6 entries on Ravelry according to my records. So all you Instagram peeps, hop over to Ravelry, join the group, and post your picture. in the thread. It's pretty easy to import pictures from Instagram into Ravelry, especially if you just import it onto your project page. So do it. You'll get another chance to win. And so on the topic of knitting in public, quick little chatty update. June 18th was Worldwide Knitting in Public Day, or WWKIP Day, and there were a few meetups happening around me that I could have gone to. There was one so I'm in North Jersey, and I'm just a short train ride away from Manhattan, or better known as New York City. I don't know. Wait, don't castigate me if you're a New York native. Does Manhattan equal New York City? Because I'm from Las Vegas, and basically saying Las Vegas means that you eat up those little constituent towns like Paradise, which actually, fun fact, most of the Las Vegas Strip is not in Las Vegas, Nevada, but in Paradise, Nevada. Tangent. Pearl Soho had a meetup, so I could have taken the train into the city and gone to their cool meetup, which had, giveaways and various cool things. But I didn't really feel like traveling, so I instead walked to a local park in the city I'm in, Montclair, New Jersey, and I met up with a really nice group of people, and we knitted in public in the park. So that meetup was organized by a local knitting group, so I'm hoping to continue meeting up with them. And this kind of takes me into knitting. The project I worked on at the meetup is the FO I have for today. So I'm so excited to show this. Wrong side. So I finished my Across the Spectrum shawl. That's my nickname for the project. The pattern is the Across the Pond shawl by Mina Phillip, who you probably all know runs the Knitting Expat podcast, and this is a great pattern. It's very adaptable. Many of Mina's patterns, especially her shawls, are adaptable, and basically the stitch patterns are very well. Okay, you can choose how many times you repeat the stitch patterns to vary the size of the segments to adapt to the amount of yarn you have. And so the pattern is written for 2 colors, but I chose to do it in 3 colors because I had partial balls. They were about probably 2/3 of a skein each from knitting a bunch of small projects, and I thought they went together really well. So it starts with this kind of slip stitch texture body, which is really nice and complements speckled or variegated yarns very well. And then this section, the speckled section, is post yarn Targhee sock, which is 90% Targhee wool, 10% nylon in the colorway Labyrinth, and it's by the Simply Socks Yarn Company. And I think they have some skeins for sale online. I'm not sure. This was part of a set that a friend gave to me. And this golden color with the first lace section is Knit Picks Hawthorne kettle dyed. So it's 80% Peruvian Highland wool and 20% nylon. So these are all wool and nylon blend fingering weight yarns. And so this thing is going to wear like iron. I'm very glad because I can be pretty hard on my knits. And the colorway is Compass, and it's this nice tonal yellow. I really like it. And this lace is just so pretty. And then finally, this bright teal section is also Targhee sock by Post Yarn, Simply Socks Yarn Company. And the colorway is Water Park. And it's also kind of tonal. The variation might not be showing up as well on my camera just because my camera doesn't handle super saturated colors too well. And so yeah, if you notice this edging, the end of the yellow section has a picot edge. You can see I'm missing a picot here. You know what? I'm not a perfectionist with my knitting. So honestly, this doesn't bug me at all. And I also have a picot edge on the teal section. And I put up a video that shows my process for doing this, what I call a tiered edge, and creating an edge where you can bind off but still have live stitches to continue working. And so yeah, I used US 5 or 3.75 millimeter needles on this project. I'm gonna put this on real quick for the glamour shot. Yeah, that's pretty. I'm probably gonna wear it like a scarf. Like probably like this. It's super huge. Way bigger than my arm span. I mean, I'm sure this would be big on someone bigger than me. I'm not a big person, but I like big shawls and scarves and sweaters and really just big, cozy everything. So yeah. Let's see. Other techniques that might be of interest in this. I already talked about the tiered edge. Check out the YouTube video for more details. How I blocked that tiered edge, I actually had to pin out the picot edges separately. So what I did was I first pinned out the outer picot edge, and then I took the inner picot edge and pinned it, and in the process that kind of, stretched out the fabric around the initial picot edge, so I kind of had to move the outer picot edge pins back out more. But kind of that iterative process helped me get the fabric the way I wanted it to be. So yeah, I'm super happy with this thing, but it is warm. It's not exactly warm. It's kind of cool today, but it's muggy. Outside it's gray, so but looking at what I have on my bed to show you all is going to be pretty colorful. I think I need that color in my day right now. And so yeah, I can also drape it over my shoulders. I can actually tie it behind my back like this. I want to wear a shawl. This is the first shawl I've made that's long enough in wingspan to do this, and I really like it. It covers my shoulders. Let's see, I'm tying it at my back. It covers my shoulders. I have a pretty big range of movement because it's big and stretchy. And yeah, I can just move pretty normally. And yeah, it is too warm out here to wear it for the summer, even though the colors are really summery. So this is just going to be part of my fall wardrobe. That's my only FO. Next up is whips. Scrolling down, I have my show notes behind my phone this time. I realized after watching my last episode, I was definitely just like looking off to the side and looking back at the camera, and that was not good. So I figured out a better setup. So first whip, this is new. Haven't shown it before, but it's also pretty far along. It's also a crescent shell, like the across the spectrum shell. I think I'm just kind of digging crescent shells right now. Though this one's not for me. This one is for my cousin. And I love her, and she wanted a shawl for me, and so I'm making her one. So the pattern I'm going to show you right here is Summer Leaf, which is by Nina Teasdale, and I highly recommend this pattern. You have the option to start with stockinette, or you can leap straight into the lace section, which is this broadleaf lace, and I chose a large stockinette section, which I will reveal later why. And the leaves just very organically come out of the stockinette, and it's really cool. I'm starting a second repeat now, and I'm thinking probably I'll finish the second repeat and then transition into the smaller leaf lace that the pattern calls for. And Nina provides very detailed instructions and very clearly written instructions for how to transition between the two types of lace, and how to choose. It's totally up to you, like how much of each lace pattern you want to knit. This is a really great pattern. And from reading the descriptions of her other patterns, that's how she writes a lot of her patterns, so I really want to knit more of her patterns. So the yarn is Madeline Tosh Merino Cashmere Nylon MCN 80-10-10 fingering, and it is so soft. It smells a little vinegary, but I'm used to that from Madeline Tosh's yarns. I don't really know why. Would someone who knows more about like yarn dyeing or something be able to tell me why Mad Tosh's yarns smell more vinegary? I don't know. It's worth it. It's this. The colorway is Astrid Gray, and it's this really cool silvery gray. Oh, it's going to be so pretty. And so I'm using US size 7 needles, or 4.5 millimeters. And this is probably the biggest needles I've ever used to knit fingering weight yarn. And I was worried that my fabric would be really holey, but if you can see here, it really doesn't look much. My gauge isn't much looser than my normal fingering weight gauge. If I knit, say, I knit most of my shells of US size 5. And I guess, like, I'm one of those people that would adjust my hand stance according to the size needle I'm using. So, yeah. And so, the reason why I wasn't showing you the whole thing is, surprise! It has holes. Can you guess why it has holes? They're armholes. So this is my major modification I'm making. And so my cousin, when she requested the shawl, she asked me, can a shawl have sleeves? Like, I've heard about them easily falling off shoulders. And I'm like, you know what? That's an interesting problem. You know what? Yeah. And I thought about the sleeves pattern by Mary Annarella, which is really pretty, but my cousin actually preferred the summer leaf lace pattern more. We spent a lot of time just like geeking out about lace patterns and picking one out. And so I was like, how would I add sleeves to a crescent shawl? And I didn't really want to buy 2 patterns. I would rather spend that extra couple bucks on nicer yarn, which I did, MCN. Oh, cashmere. It's so soft. Seriously. It's just like a dream to work with, and it just glides. I feel like it just glides through my needles. I'm almost at the end of the first ball. This is how much I have. Oh, it's so soft. Okay, stopping. So something I knew, I thought that, just kind of a thought, I thought that maybe a circular yoke construction, like say for a sweater, would give me some ideas. Because you knit those top down, and then you set aside stitches for the sleeves. And so I looked up some free top down circular yoke sweaters, and I ended up using, well, kind of following the Anya sweater by Joanne Scrasse for inspiration. And so basically what I did was I knitted stockinette up until I had to ask my cousin for her bust measurement to know how far apart the armholes should be, and then set aside some stitches place them onto waste yarn, and then instead of knitting those set aside stitches, I used a provisional cast on to create new stitches, which would make the bottom of the armhole continue knitting, and then created a second armhole in the same way, and then finished the row, and then just kept knitting from there. So when I start knitting the sleeve, I'm going to pick up all of the stitches on the waste yarn, and then unzip this provisional cast on, and then I did the math for this. It was like 60. I'll have like 60 stitches for the sleeve. So yeah, I actually had to do the provisional cast on without a crochet hook, because in my chaotic move, I didn't bring any crochet hooks. I might order some. I don't know. I feel like I've been spending a lot of money on like getting set up after this move, so I'll make do without a crochet hook for as long as I can. But yeah, basically what I had to do was I took some smaller knitting needles. They happen to be DPNs, but all you need are 2 tips of needles. And so what you do is you knit a stitch, slip it back from your right needle back to your left needle, and then knit into that stitch. And basically, I mean, that's what a crochet chain does. You're pulling a chain loop up, and unlike in knitting, you don't catch that new loop on the crochet hook. So you create a chain that way. It's kind of hard to explain with just my hands and my voice, but there are, guides online. You should totally look them up. It's useful if you're in a pinch like I've been. And so, last thing before I move on to my next whip, I kind of want to geek out about like, a math concept that came out while I was working on this shawl. So because I set aside these stitches for the sleeves and cast on new ones, that meant that my stitch count deviated from what the pattern recommended. And so I had to do a bit of math to figure out like when exactly it would work for me to start the lace repeat. So the lace repeat is 16 stitches plus a couple of stitches. And so I'm not going to say the exact stitch count because that's not good form. This is a little slip paper I use to do my math for the modifications and figuring out when to start the lace pattern. So the lace pattern is a 16 stitch repeat, and then the extra, I'm not going to give you the right number, this is a different number. So let's say I needed a multiple of 16 plus 9 stitches to start the lace pattern. And I would count so at the end of a wrong side row, I would count the number of stitches I had, figure out how much it was as a multiple of 16 plus some number, let's call that x. So basically, what happens when you break down a large number into multiple of a and then remainder b, that is modular arithmetic. Basically, you're taking, let's say I had 219 stitches. If I took that and found out what multiple of 16 it was plus some number x, that would be, I'm basically taking 216 modulo 16. 219 modulo 16. Yeah, I remember I'm not being precise with the arithmetic on purpose so that I'm not giving away details about the pattern. So let's say I counted my stitches and I got that it was 16 mod 9. That's saying it's a multiple of 16 plus 9 extra stitches. And so if each back and forth row, at the end of every wrong side row, I'm going to get an additional 6 stitches. If I need 16 mod 11 stitches to start the lace pattern, and I'm not going to do any corner cutting or any sort of cheats to kind of get that stitch count, what do I do? Like, I could just increase by 2 stitches and start the lace pattern right away. But I felt like not being lazy and trying to just do the pattern right, because God knows, I've already mutilated this pattern enough. Okay, so it turns out the way you do modular addition. So, let's see. This is my math for doing modular math. So when you add 6 to, so we're basically adding 6 to a number modulus 16. So so I said that our number of stitch counts is 16 modulus, not 16 modulo line, which modulo 9, which I'm saying 16 mod 9 for short. If we add 6 stitches, then that's pretty simple. We are at 16 9 plus 6 is 15, and we are at 16 mod 15. So a multiple of 16 plus 15 extra. And so what happens when we add 6 again? So we're going to have 16 mod 21. 15 plus 6 is 21. But 21 is bigger than 16. So that if we have a multiple of 16 plus 21, there is one more set of 16 in that 21. So we subtract 16 to get 5. 21 minus 16 is 5. And now so that means that 16 mod 21 is the same as 16 mod 5. And so it turns out if you keep adding 6 to a number modulo 16, then it follows a cycle. So we started at 16, 9, and then add 6. This is all crossed out because I had the checklist of what was going on. So 16 mod 9 plus 6, you get 16 mod 15. Plus 6, you get 16 mod 5. Add 6 again, 16 mod 11, 16 mod 1, and then 16 mod 7. So my target was 16 mod 7. And so if I'm at 16 mod 9, then I know I will need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows back and forth, repeats of the stockinette section before I could start the lace. So yeah, math nerdery there. I thought it was really cool. Oh, the sun just came out. It's been pretty cloudy today, and I feel like I've been pretty droopy. So it might not seem that way to you now, but that's because I had afternoon coffee, which I normally don't, because I felt like I needed that extra kick. That's enough about I have weird nicknames for all of my projects. This is the pattern is summer leaf, and it's silver. I could call it silver leaf, but it's also inspired by sleeves. So it's the I can do this. Sliver leaf shawl. Yeah. Okay. Feel free to ignore me. Alright. Next whip is I'm calling them the Jaywalker striping socks. And the pattern is Jaywalker, and the author of the pattern is Grumperino, which is a great name. And I'm actually doing this is a free pattern on Ravelry, and originally the pattern's written for cuff down socks. And I'm using a toe-up modification, which was written by Natalia Merrick. All of this information is going to be linked in the show notes, which is of course in the Ravelry thread. The yarn is Opal Sweet and Spicy 3 in the colorway Saffron, and I spent a long time deciding what pattern to use with this yarn. Because this is my first time working with self-striping yarn, I could do a vanilla sock, but if you've picked up by now, I really like a challenge in my knitting. And I've seen patterns that do super cool things with self-striping yarn that take the stripes and make them all bendy. And so this pattern, Jaywalker, is going to make the stripes zigzaggy. And the toe-up modification, by the way, is also available as a free pattern on Ravelry. Highly recommend it. It's thank you to Natalia for taking the time to figure this out. The Jaywalker pattern I found to be a little confusing, but I think that's because I'm changing it from the pattern's written for DPNs, and I'm of course knitting it magic loop 2 at a time, which I always do. So these needles are US 1 or 2.25 millimeters, and they're actually 47 inch. It's a 47 inch circular needle from Knit Picks, so I think this is their nickel plated series, which kind of reminds me of a conversation I had on Instagram with Joanna, who is Yoga Jo Knits on Instagram. And Joanna is Shannon of the Sock Setter podcast, part-time co-host. Sometimes she'll come on and they'll talk knitting together, and it's really cool. So she on her Instagram account asked about doing magic loop 2 at a time socks because she wanted to try it out. And I said that I normally use a 40-inch cable, but sometimes I wish I had a 47-inch cable. And so she asked why. And then I realized that I've never really had to think about that before. Sometimes when I'm knitting with a 40-inch cable, using a 40-inch circular, I feel like, wow, I wish I had more cable. But I realized that's because my normal sock needles are ChiaoGoo knit lace needles, so the pointy ones. And ChiaoGoo needles just have this very stiff red cable that it seems like a metal wire core surrounded by plastic. And so it's stiff, and so if you have the shorter the cable, the smaller your magic loop, and kind of the more tension it puts on those edge stitches. And so I've not had to deal with that at all from the Knit Picks needles. However, Knit Picks does, the cable on the Knit Picks needles is softer. So honestly, it's just because it's at the point where it's just floppy and kind of annoying, but I'll put up with it. I'm not complaining. It's just observations. So that's it for whips. I have a, well, this can't even be called a needle adjacent project, a nap, because oh, the yarn's not here yet. I accidentally shipped it to my old school mailing address, having them forward it to me, but it's not here yet. And it's for my surprise scrappy project, which I talked about last time. And I'm going to be talking about it a lot because I'm really excited for it. But since the yarn's still not here, I'm not going to be like, well, I have this surprise project. You're not going to hear about it. So, to cut the suspense, a friend asked me to make 3 puppets for her out of any yarn I want. She's giving me full creative freedom over it. And according to her message, it's for an interpersonal experiment type communication things. So I'm not, in her head, and I haven't asked for that many details, so it won't really, influence my decisions, and she wants me to be as creative as possible. And I'm imagining, role-playing, little role-playing scenarios like you do with kids. And she mentioned the words silly and artful, and that's all I got. And so I got a big bag of yarn scraps from someone's D-stash, and I am going to make kind of sock puppets. They're probably closer to mitten puppets. And so because I'm making them on my own, you know how when you make sock puppets, you use the heel as kind of the hole for your, the bottom half for your thumb. I can make that longer, or I can give them a cool crazy tongue, or some weird hair. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that project. So I have that big bag of yarn scraps on the way, and that's going to be all acrylic, pretty standard texture yarns. So this is a call. I'm gonna put out a call. If you have a ball of those I'm not gonna say weird. I don't want to be judgy. Those textural novelty yarns, they're pom-poms or tape, or the tape ribbon yarns or boucle or something. And if it's sitting in your stash and you just don't know what to do with it, or maybe I feel like this is the kind of yarn that a knitter might get from a non-knitter, because they're like, oh look, this is colorful and cool and stuff, and they're like, hey, you might like this yarn. Not to disparage that. I think these yarns have their own uses, but yeah, if you have scraps of that lying around, you don't know what to do with it, I would be happy to take them. Yeah, no pressure at all. So I am actually going to take a break now because it's been half an hour, and I've only gotten through my knitting content. I have some spinning coming up and then some chattery stuff, but not much left. So going to stop right here and I'll be right back. We're back. So I have some spinning to show you, and both of these braids that I'm going to show is from Sheldrake Hill Woolens, which is actually based out of New York. I have a little card right here. That's their contact information. Yeah, I didn't know they were based out of New York before I looked at the label, but that's cool. So they're pretty close to me, relatively. I looked up where Ovid is, and it's north of, it's pretty close to Ithaca, which is where Cornell University is. So, this is the fiber that I'm spinning right now, and it was a 4-ounce braid of merino. I really can't resist when I had not spun for, it felt like weeks. It was a couple weeks, and I got this braid, and I was like, oh my god. And so I unbraided it and didn't even get to take any pictures of it in the braided form and just started spinning. So this is what I have so far. This is about 2 ounces of the 4-ounce braid. It's merino, and so really spinning it has been different. The last wool the last fiber I spun was fin sheep wool, and that was like very, very springy. It was also from Lock, so it was like a little less prepared and carded, and it felt like it had a little more grease in it. That's fine. And so yeah, merino just, of course, everyone knows how soft merino is. And it also has really long, straight fibers that are kind of, because it's not like springy or crimpy. It spins very smoothly. And the last time I spun merino was actually my second time ever spinning hand spun. So it was just like slipping everywhere, and I had a bunch of thick and thin sections. And so I feel like this time I really have better control over my drafting merino, which is my hand stance for drafting merino is way different from when I was spinning the wool. And so yeah, this is the rest of the braid that I have left. What I did with the fiber was I'm doing fractal spinning, so I split the braid in half lengthwise, and then I split one of those halves in half to make 2/4. And so what's on the spindle right now is the 2/4 spun end to end. And after I'm done recording this, I'm going to wind this off and then spin up this second half, and then I plan on plying the two singles together. The reason I have to wind it off and spin it up again is because I only have this one spindle. Right now, getting a second spindle is not in my budget, and I left my second spindle at home. This one disassembles, so it was easy to pack. So yeah. Alright, and then second spinning is, oh, by the way, I'm calling this I'm gonna call this hand spun wool gems, because you have these reds, greens, blues, and they're really like jewel tones. Also, I'm a fan of Steven Universe, and so you definitely have like sapphire, ruby. This could definitely be malachite. This is peridot, so I'm calling them wool gems. Oh man, I'm a nerd. Don't mind me. Next braid, so reminder, this is also from Sheldrake Hill Woolens, is Wensleydale. I just got this last night, so I have not even unbraided it, which is good. I can't resist unbraiding. Roving is so fun. And this is Wensleydale, and it'll be my first time spinning Wensleydale, and I really like these like yellowy greens. Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to manage the colors of it. I could do what I did with the fin and kind of break it apart into segments and create a gradient out of it. I think this would be a really nice, like, lemony yellow to dark foresty green gradient. So, we'll see. That's all the physical, fibery stuff I have to show you. If that's all you're here for, thanks so much for coming and watching. And I'm going to move on to some chit-chatty things. And first up is Podlove, because I haven't done any shout-outs to, like, podcasts I've been checking out for a couple episodes. And honestly, like, there's so many good ones out there. I know there are a lot of podcasts I'm missing, so this is just my own opinion. And so the first podcast I want to mention is one I should have started watching a long time ago, and that is Marcia of the Twitch and Stitch podcast. I mentioned her earlier, and that she donated one of her patterns as a prize for the KIP-Along, but also started watching her podcast finally. Of course, she did the Sockathon with Mina back in January, and I mean, I heard all about her, and she used the podcast with her sister Scylla, and yeah, I love the variety in her projects, and she, in her most recent episode, she talks about knitting sweaters using the flax pattern from Tin Can Knits, and I've seen so many people knit it. It looks like this nice, cozy, very wearable basic sweater. and she finished one for herself in this beautiful baby blue, but she's also knitting a second one, and this story is adorable. She knows this little girl, and this little girl asked her for a sweater in this really sweet way, and Marcia, who is also a person with a big heart, as this episode is titled, of course, is knitting her one. That's just so nice. I'm such a sucker for knitting for kids. I'm not. Actually, no, I have a few friends who are having babies, and it's weird, but also in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I have babies to knit for now. It's so weird, though. They're having babies. Alright. Moving on. Second podcast I want to mention is one that I've just started watching. She reached out to me in my Ravelry group, and so she's also a viewer. Oh, by the way, hi, Marcia! And so the second one I want to say hi to is Maureen of the Simply More Crafting podcast. Hi, Maureen. And in her recent episode, she made something. She knitted what she called first responder bears, which are little, not that little actually. They look very big and squishy and soft. They're stuffed bear plushies that are meant for people who are first responders to children in like abusive homes or domestic violence situations, such as the police officers that will show up at the door, firemen, paramedics, emergency responders like that, and really to give to the child in that situation and lift their spirits a bit while they deal with that traumatic situation. And that is just amazing. And it's just, like, listening to Maureen, you can tell is like she has a big heart. She's a really generous spirit. And I realize with these two shoutouts, I am being a huge sap. I don't know, lately I've just been such a sucker for I've been so sentimental, and I'm a huge sap, but makes me happy, and I'll take all the happiness I can get. So next section is the on my radar section, and I'm kind of rolling in life updates with this. So last time I keep doing this thing with my hair while I'm recording. I should just not have my bangs out when I'm recording anymore then. So life updates. Last time I mentioned that the reason I moved to New Jersey from California is because I'm doing a teaching fellowship, and now I can finally talk about it because we had the official press release. It's 2 Wednesdays ago now. Today is Tuesday, June 28th. And so that was the day after I recorded and posted episode 11. And so the teaching fellowship I'm doing is the Woodrow Wilson Teaching Fellowship, which is a fellowship that I'm going to work on my master's degree, and then they give me funding for my master's, and in exchange I commit to teaching in the New Jersey area for 3 years. And this fellowship focuses on training teachers to teach in urban school districts for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math subjects. And we weren't allowed to talk about it before that press release, just because it was in accordance. So you have the foundation, which is federally funded, the Woodrow Wilson Foundation, and then they partner with states for the school districts and state universities to provide the master's degrees. And the states want to make their individual press releases. So on the day of the press release, a classmate and I actually drove down to Trenton, New Jersey, which is the state capital, and we met Governor Chris Christie and shook hands with him, took pictures, listened to the speeches, and blah blah blah. I'm not going to get too much into politics. I'm not. Okay, shutting up. So that was cool. We were, it's always cool and interesting for me to be in like this official-ish setting. I'm sure I'm a huge dork and not really just like trying to fit in and pasting on a smile and be like, hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm trying not to mess up here. Yeah, that's how I felt all the time. the entire time I was there for that press release. But yeah, the fellowship's been really cool. We're taking classes that are preparing us to teach in what what we're calling an urban environment, and I'm still grappling with the meaning of that, and unpacking all of those implications, because it's very racially charged. It's suggests a certain socioeconomic class. It suggests all this history to it, and that really came out when we yesterday, instead of having class, we attended a conference that was on campus at Montclair State University. That was the so it was called a MSU NER conference. It stands for Montclair State University Network for Educational Renewal, and it was attended by teachers and administrators, people who are interested in education in the area. And the keynote speaker was David Dante Trout. So this takes me formally to the On My Radar section. And David Dante Trout, so I'm just calling refer to him by last name, Trout. So Trout wrote a book going to talk about, which is titled "The Price of Paradise," and his talk was very much related to his book. And I haven't started reading the book yet, but based on the talk, I'm really interested in reading it. He talked about the structural inequity of suburbs and urban areas, and how historically suburbs have been built up to reinforce inequalities in socioeconomic class. And of course, class oppression is tied in with racial oppression, and all of this is intermingled, with ability, gender. All of these structures are linked. And his talk focused on suburban poverty, actually, which was a phenomenon I haven't heard the name for, but I've definitely seen. And so suburban poverty refers to the trend of poor people moving out of what we think of as inner city areas, the barrios, the ghettos, and going to suburbs, that because now through processes like gentrification, and downtown areas becoming this cool hip place for young people to hang out, and there's public transportation and everything's convenient, people are now moving out to the suburbs because housing there is now more affordable than their apartments in the inner city whose rents have been rising because of gentrification. And so suburbs as an environment were built for the middle class who could afford to buy homes, get a car, commute to the city. And of course, these living environments are also tied to the educational system. And so housing inequality with suburbs and urban areas, and how like certain racial groups have been excluded from buying houses in the suburbs in the past, that leads to divides and disparities in the school system, which we see today. And so it was just a really interesting talk. I'm of course processing a lot, and reading this book will help me, but I am really excited to read this book, and it should be available on Amazon, though ironically it's like kind of expensive. So I don't know, it's ironic that you write a book about economic inequality, and I guess you just kind of have to play into the system to sell your books. But yeah, more about the fellowship. This summer we're taking classes, and we're starting an internship with a local STEM summer camp for middle schoolers. So that's starting next week, and I'm probably going to be talking about it a lot on future episodes, and that's probably going to be most of my life. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And with that is all I have for you this time. I'm still on this like fluctuating schedule with classes that's been regular, but now the internship is going to start up and change up my schedule again. I'm still trying to record about once every 2 weeks. So thank you all for sticking with me. Thanks for watching, and if you liked what you heard and saw today, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and then pop over to the Ravelry group to chat, discuss something you heard in this episode, something going on with your life. I really like keeping up with my viewers, and I really think of you all as my friends. So I really want to, know what my friends are up to. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I'm Chanel. Bye.